Good morning.
How are we doing? That's much better. Let's try to get emotions up. I'm from Estonia, so we have no emotions. You guys supposed to have emotions.
That's right. So good morning. So my name is Eugene, and this is Raido. Apparently, we're esteemed guests today. So today we want to talk a little bit about Estonia, and I think the title is what it takes to build a successful startup ecosystem the Estonian way. So Raido is the a proud representative of the country of Estonia, and so perhaps
No pressure.
Before we start, let me ask you a question about why should we care about Estonia? What is special about Estonia? Why are you here talking about Estonia? Perhaps take us over what happened in Estonia over the last 25 years, and perhaps also the plans for Estonia going into 2030, as we talked about.
Well, I hope some of you guys who are in tech industry do know what Estonia is about, but a few facts. So we have the most startups per capita. It was already mentioned before. So if you guys here now have maybe 200 startups and you have, I've understood, like 3 million people roughly in this area, then we have only 1 million people in Estonia and 1,500 startups. That's an impressive number, but it's also more impressive that we have 10 unicorns in Estonia. So that means that $10 billion companies, and Bolt, for example, is a decacorn, so a $10 billion company. So the facts for our tech ecosystem, for the private side, I think for the success speaks for themselves. It's of course all based on that Estonia is a fully digital nation. We used to be like 99.9 digital. Just starting this year, we are now 100% digital because you couldn't get married online. You can do that as well. So that's the last thing we had to do. So you can do that as well, and you can get divorced online as well.
Do you get to meet your partner before?
Not necessarily. You know, if you want to, it's like an optional thing, like actually meeting and actually being there. So when AI girlfriends and AI boyfriends are going to be a thing, well, come to Estonia. No need to meet. But all joking aside, being a fully digital country has its merits because the bureaucracy and dealing with the government, things are just so much faster. So yes, I think Estonia has two things to think about. We are a fully digital nation. We have shown what you guys are doing here is possible. I would currently predict that you're maybe, let's say, 10 years behind on where we were, but you can for sure make it happen. Today it's been so inspiring to see when I was creating Latitude59 in 2010 and the same kind of passion or feeling I used to have. So I'm feeling really nostalgic, really happy to be here. And for the next 5 years, we aim to have 30% of our GDP influenced by startups. 30%. And yes, it was mentioned that currently not many Estonian unicorns are based from Estonia, but that has changed. Bolt is based from Estonia now, some other companies. So we aim to be a country for whole of Europe to set up your headquarters in the next 5 years. I think that's about Estonia in short.
Thank you, and I think that's a good that's a good overview. And I think just to, the way I see the reason why we're here in this room, right? The reason why the Startup Summit is put together is to create a vibrant and healthy digital and technology ecosystem in Moldova to drive economic development, right? This is what this is all about in the end. And as Raido mentioned, Estonia is looking to generate 30%, 30, of its economy by 2030. So you're well on the way. I can't remember what the number is today.
Yeah, 10, roughly that. It's always like it is with PR and marketing. We like to say one number publicly. What the actual number is might be slightly smaller, but let's call it 10% at the moment.
Okay. But yeah, to get to 30% of the economy purely in digital services, of course, would be a huge achievement. And that is why we're here. That is why you're on this stage. Is because, of course, we from Moldova would love to understand, how the Estonia have reached the stages of its development that it is today, and also where it's going. Because I think Moldova has very, very similar aspirations as Deputy Prime Minister talked about earlier. Right? It's about generating economic growth, generating good jobs, and of course prosperity for the country. This is why we're here. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about how Estonia got from where it was, because for those of you who don't know, we talk about Moldova being a small country. Estonia is half the size of Moldova. Half the size of Moldova and 10 unicorns, and I'm sure many more brewing. So the size itself cannot be used as an excuse because, Estonia managed, and so if they did, why can't Moldova? You, of course, I assume everyone knows, Estonia and Moldova share a common post-World War II history, being both ex-Soviet states, both being relatively small, both being devoid of natural resources, and there, of course, IT and digital services make a lot of sense in terms of the development. But let's talk about Estonia's path. And so, how did Estonia get to the stage of digital and economic development that it did? Can you point some of the developments and some of the key points along that path, and what can we learn as Moldova from Estonia's path?
I think, first of all, big congratulations what you've been doing it for the last, 4 years. A lot of the things I saw Olga talk about in the morning was like, okay, we did that worked, we did that worked as well. So at the moment, first of all, I think you are already well on your way and doing the right things. So it's not me or the Estonian experience saying that changed path or anything else. It's more like you're doing a really good job. So first of all, a big applause to all of you here. Great job running Moldova in the right direction. Good job. Now, I was asked to be somewhat helpful, so I'm not just going to praise along and say, everything is okay. So one thing I think was in our history in general, Estonians have been known to move really fast. We are somewhat not too emotional. We are really concrete, and we like to do things fast. So one thing I'm kind of seeing here is that many things are happening, but even I would recommend to move even faster. The startup ecosystem of Estonia, I would say, was built in about 4, maybe 5 years. Like in 2009, one of the reasons why I'm also one of the maybe 10, 15 members of the ecosystem who has built most of the stuff. In 2009 in Estonia as well, we were quite fed up that when we were going to Silicon Valley or going to London, the Silicon Roundabout and so on, we were feeling like, why do they have business angel networks, and why do they have accelerators and access to capital and all those things happening for them? We don't have anything. So I was quite frustrated with the first 2 failed companies, and don't worry, after my 3rd companies, all of them have worked. But there was like 10 other guys, like Ragnar Ksass, who's the founder of Pipedrive, or the first manager of Skype, and Sten Damkivi, and the founders of Bolt. And so all those people who are now the founders of unicorns, so most of those guys were just in 2009, we were meeting up every now and then just being really angry, like why things are not working for us. And we kind of agreed that, okay, with these 10, 15 people, we will change the country around. So we founded all those things, the largest conferences like Latitude59, the Business Angel Network, Venture Capital Association, the largest incubator, all of those things were actually put in place in about 4, maybe even 3 or 4 years. And then the last 10 years, it's just been like enjoying the reward. So at the moment, I think you have done a really great job, and I think what you could even do more is even faster. Some of those things that you're missing, I heard that you don't yet have, for example, a founders society. That's one thing to easily copy from Estonia that has worked, to create a special group of founders to talk to each other, to help each other out. I've understood you have some hackathons, but there's certainly things to do faster and more often as well, like monthly things, really moving the ecosystem forward, and a few other things you can copy from there. But I think Moldova is doing a really great job. So with that having been said, just pick up the pace a bit and you're all good.
And could I ask, in this development and then those critical 3 to 4 years where you've established the business angel networks, you've established the hackathon, you've established the incubators and so on, what role did the government play? What role did external, perhaps, investors or external parties, and what role did the local, those 10, 15 critical people that were in Estonia looking to build? So what roles did those various parties have played? And so what can we take away from in terms of Moldova going forward?
Again, I like the winds and of course the wine, but I like the winds blowing in Moldova at the moment. What's your Deputy Prime Minister said, I think yesterday as well in the morning, I think your cooperation currently with the political or the governmental side is really important. It's not that the government will do anything for you. They will not do anything for you. But they will stay out of the way. And that's a big thing. like showing the direction and making it possible for the private sector to grow. That's, I think, the most important thing that also worked for us. Every now and then, of course, throw in the fund of funds, throw in some things, maybe rule some laws. That's fine. But in general, I think that's a really a critical thing. To go further, I think if you think about what else you can do, let's think about what else could you take out of me. If you think about,
I think, well, before, as we were preparing for this session, right, you've asked me a number of questions, such as, do you have business angel networks? And we have some of that. And I think Olga talked about BAM, Business Angel Moldova, talked about Mosaic, who's a very active syndicate. You asked me about hackathons, and I know the Startup Moldova and others put this on. You asked me if there are incubators, and there are, and accelerators, like DreamUps, XY, and others. And so it seems like we have the building blocks, right?
For sure.
The previous presentation talked about, the path of Romania and the access of capital, because of course capital is the lifeblood of any digital ecosystem. So I think while there is growth, and again, as Olga talked about in terms of the capital availability, we're definitely still quite far behind Romania, let alone Estonia, because I think Estonia with 1.4 million people, which is about half of Moldova, right, is doing at least 10x of what Moldova does in a bad year. In a good year, which is 3 years ago, right, they did something like 40x.
1.3 billion.
Yeah, so a country of 1.3 million people attracted $1.3 billion in 6 years. Obviously, those were the heydays of 2022, but even now, in a bad year, they're still doing 10x.
Yeah, 400, something like that.
So again, the small size is no excuse. Looking at
well, picking up on that, that's one key thing. Yeah, besides the government staying out of the way, I think your private sector has been somewhat shy in actually going to other places. Like one thing I remember from the experience of my home country was that every 3 or 4 years, to a person who had been Estonia, I had to re-explain Estonia because things were moving so fast. And it was really hard to explain what's happening. So I basically, one of the reasons why I wanted to create Latitude and why I think you're doing a great job here is that every couple of years, you brought this American investor over and they were like, oh, okay, that's new, that's different, things have changed. And it was happening like just every 2 years, the guy came like for the 4th time, for the 5th time, for the 10th time. And then they were always constantly saying, okay, the rate of progress is just so fast. And I kind of felt this when Eugene talked to me in December. And I felt this feeling of nostalgia that, okay, I trust you, so I'll come over based on your trust. But I also trust that I'm going to have a much different feeling when I'm actually here. So one thing I think all of you guys should do is, first of all, try to get to other countries, to their startup events and tech events. But every time you go there, try to invite, if you go to Estonia, to Latitude59, try to invite more Estonians to next year to come here. If you go to Silicon Valley, try to invite people here. Try to attract the diaspora and people who have ties to Moldova. I think that's one of the building blocks that we kind of built on as well, that we kind of try to get all the people who are linked to Estonia to come back more often, but we also are really active and just went to other places and just always dragged one more person to go to the event and just show what's happening. You have a much better advantage. Like, we don't have as good wine as you guys do. So for sure, you can attract people much easier. We have bad climate. You have much better climate. So if in 10 years, you're not going at the same speed as Estonia, I would be disappointed because you have much more advantages that we had. But I think it's just being, like I mentioned, even more aggressive, even more active, and believing in yourself. I think what you're doing. But yeah, just attracting those people from abroad and actually bringing them over makes a lot of difference.
So the building blocks that we talked about in terms of angels, in terms of incubators, hackathons, and so on is one thing. But of course, that in itself is not sufficient, right? One of the things we also talked about is culture. So culture of innovation, culture of risk-taking, culture of entrepreneurship, right? Can you talk a little bit about the Estonian culture, and does it lend itself well to that, because I think one of the challenges that perhaps we're also facing is also talking about what is entrepreneurship. And I guess this is one of the ways to spread it. There's a lot of students here, and that is very encouraging. But yeah, the underlying culture and risk perception is also very important.
I totally agree, and again, so that's something that when I was starting my first companies, it's not like Estonia was like a wonder kid or everybody were talking entrepreneurship. No, it wasn't like that at all. I'm from a big family. I have 4 brothers and sisters. I was brought up in a quite a, I would say, slightly poorish, but not in great environment. But I'm really grateful from my parents because they taught me that you can make a lot out of anything. So Estonia, in that sense, as we are a small country, we've always been attacked by somebody. In that sense, in our culture, inherently, this kind of grit or that we will survive, this is there. But this is something I think is here as well. Being still somewhat smaller than your neighbors, I think that's a good thing about and similarities between our cultures. Now, to build on that culture, an entrepreneur is somebody that is willing to live part of his life or her life in a way that nobody wants to live in order to live at one point like this that nobody else can live. So it does mean that it's not going to be nice. My wife, I met my wife as well by mentoring her, by the way, and I told her on the first meeting that if you're going to do this company, I promise you, you are a perfectionist, you will cry at least once every week. And that happened. Now we have 3 children and we are much happier, but the first years are not easier. But entrepreneurs are people, I would say, who have, even if they don't say it publicly, a childhood trauma. They have seen something and they have wanted something and then they just go and build it. So the culture that I have understood that's kind of here in this region is that somewhat people, the older generation, are afraid. They're not sure what's going to happen. They might be even afraid of the word entrepreneurship and building a company. It's not different. It wasn't different for us as well. But with the first examples, with my first companies as well, if you get those few families, those few people going over that and just showing it's possible and accepting that failure is fine, you're going to get there step by step. So you're going to have a few people in the beginning that will need all the support you guys can give them. Like, that's why those events again and bringing people over is so important, that those brave few people who will try, even if sometimes the culture, even the background, even the families might look at the guys and the girls like, what the fuck are you doing? Don't, you have a great job. Then you guys need to support those people. So the culture, I think, is here. You can build on this. Don't try to get everything at once. It took us the first, I would say, 7 to 10 years before actually the traditional companies started to accept startups in Estonia. I remember still in 2017 and 2018, like the old industry entrepreneurs were like fighting the young startups in unicorns and the first billionaires that startups are nothing. So I think that's again one lesson that you can do much better here in Moldova. Like, don't try to fight also the old generation or the old money. Try to understand them. Try to understand that they don't understand you. So try to be polite and try to figure out like if you can build on this and maybe train them much better than we did in Estonia. And I think we lost 4 or 5 years in our development by just not actually tapping into the old railway guys or the old real estate guys and who were just afraid. They didn't understand technology, didn't understand innovations, and that's human nature. If you don't understand something, then you're afraid of it. So there's certainly things that in the culture you have in common, things you can build on, and certainly do better than we did in Estonia.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think I would love to see more Ferraris and Lamborghinis in this country bought by selling real businesses, real revenue, real customers, yeah, and not acquired in other more Moldovan ways that have been up to now. So coming now to an end, let's close with a final thought or final question is, if you had one wish for Moldova's technology or tech future, what would that be?
Be better than Estonia.
Nice and simple. So well, in which case, I will wish the Estonian nation for it to achieve its 2030 goals of having 30% of its country's GDP to be generated by technology and digital services. I'll wish the same to Republic of Moldova. I agree with you that I think Republic of Moldova is following, let's say, in Estonia's footsteps in terms of its development, perhaps also Romania, but also in a way where then able to look to Estonia, to Romania, and also learn from their experiences and their successes as well as their mistakes. Hopefully try not to repeat those on our path. But yeah, wishing then both Estonia and Republic of Moldova much success going forward.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much.